Raiders wide receiver Davante Adams took a massive shot at the Los Angeles Chargers, and on that same podcast, he also gave us some insight into a trade that could possibly happen with him, which would link him and his former quarterback together once again. But as the Raiders prepare for the 2024 season, there's one guy in particular that is going viral for how massive he looks. There are also some key battles that some people are intrigued about, and we're going to get into all of that in today's video. So with that being stated, let's just get right into it.
It was a little trend a little bit ago where, you know, few of the social media pages were posting some funny stuff when the schedule was releasing. So they posted me and then like a trash can or something like that, the Chargers did. So I thought about responding on social media to it and you know, being funny there, but I figured it'd be better to, you know, just beat their head in real life and continue doing it the way, you know, because my first game against them, I don't know, they clearly forgot.
Yeah, you
like
played
10 catches, 141 yards and a touchdown. And then the next time, that same year, it was like 177 yards and, you know, 2 touchdowns, I think it was that game. So I just wanted to kind of remind them what they've been going through as it pertains to playing against me. And hopefully the people that made that post, because it's not the players' fault, they didn't have anything to do with the post, but this is directed strictly toward the Chargers social media page. Please keep my name out your mouth.
So obviously Davante Adams took a shot at the Los Angeles Chargers social media team. As you guys know, the team actually trolled Davante Adams. When the schedule release came out, essentially they called him trash. Davante Adams told us that he thought about responding in the past, but ultimately decided not to. And I love how professional he is, but at the same time, he makes his point across, which is not to mess with me, right? Not to call me an average player, a trash player, because based off of what our two teams ended up doing the last 4 times that we played, based off of the individual numbers that Davante Adams had, he's basically saying that you guys could not cover me. But yet here you guys are calling me trash when I'm one of the most respected wide receivers in the NFL. Even at this point in his career, Davante Adams is still a top 5 wide receiver. And a lot of people would say that right after Justin Jefferson, Davante Adams is the 2nd best wide receiver in the NFL. And I probably wouldn't disagree with that at this point. Davante Adams' route running is absolutely incredible. The guy's a very, very good football player. And there's no reason why, if the Raiders quarterback play is better, Davante Adams couldn't end up having a great season once again this upcoming season. Davante Adams has shown us that he's a phenomenal wide receiver, and he can pretty much create separation from anybody. There was a play that I remember against the Rams in the first year Davante Adams was with us. He straight up beat Jalen Ramsey and just caught a really, really nice pass right over the top as he went out of bounds. And there's so many plays like that with Davante Adams on tape. But there are some people that think the Raiders should potentially trade Davante Adams. And there's a quarterback that Davante Adams played with in the past that actually is recruiting Davante Adams, or at least that's what Davante Adams tells us.
You two are boys, a lot of love for each other. You went to the Derby together. We see the pictures on the Instagram. Are you telling me he's not getting in your ear and saying, hey, I want to play with you again?
Oh, he's in that ear, that's for sure. he's in the ear, but you know, it's not as easy as it, you know, obviously we can get together and talk about the old times and potential of doing this and that, but like I said, I'm a Raider, so, and he knows that, so.
Now, I'll be the first to tell you guys, I think Davante Adams is a phenomenal football player. I think this is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. And I think when you have that caliber of player, you keep that guy on your team. When you gave up a 1st and 2nd round pick for a certain player, you keep that guy as long as possible. Now, of course, that's not going to stop people from talking about the Davante Adams contract. As you guys know, he signed a 5-year, $140 million contract with the Raiders. When the Raiders ultimately brought him in, they gave him $65.6 million guaranteed up front. So what that means is the Raiders took lower cap hits in the first 3 years, which means the last 2 years are going to have a much higher cap hit. Keep in mind, Davante Adams is getting about $28 million per season. So that is what the cap hit should have been on average, but it was clearly a lot less. And that was because the Raiders looked at it like, you know, we'll backload his contract. And we're at that point now after this season here, after Davante Adams counts against $25 million in 2024, come 2025, you're looking at a $44 million cap hit for Davante Adams. So some people have been saying the Raiders should potentially trade Davante Adams at this point, and they should look forward to moving forward without Davante Adams, right? They should look to potentially trade him. And as Davante Adams is talking about how Aaron Rodgers has said, hey, come to the Jets. He even talked about it in that same interview that Josh Jacobs also has been telling him to come back to the Green Bay Packers. So Davante Adams has, you know, all the interest in the world, but Davante Adams wants to be with the Raiders, right? He's made that clear at this point. He wants to finish his career with the Raiders, but there are still some Raider fans that think it doesn't make sense to keep Davante Adams as we go forward, right? Because at the end of the day, although Davante Adams is a phenomenal football player, he's a great wide receiver, he's also at the point where he has 2 or 3 years left in his career. The Raiders don't really have a quarterback that's going to, potentially get us into the Super Bowl, although I don't know if I 100% agree with that. But the Raiders aren't in a place where they're going to spend $44 million on a wide receiver. And I say I don't really agree with that, because if you think about the Las Vegas Raiders and the actual team that they are, your defense is going to carry you this season. You should have a top 5 defense. And if you have a top 5 defense, I think a top 5 wide receiver also makes you better, right? He's going to allow you to be able to win football games. There's going to be moments over the course of the game as the game just kind of, goes with the natural script, where Davante Adams is going to get involved, he's going to win, and he's going to allow the Las Vegas Raiders to ultimately pick up the W, right? Based off of how he's able to beat guys. So although I do understand from a cap space perspective, $44 million is a ton of money. So in that instance, it definitely makes sense for the Raiders to think about trading Davante Adams. I don't personally think they should. I think the Las Vegas Raiders are in a position where the Raiders don't really have a ton of money invested in a quarterback at this point, right? We don't have a quarterback making $50 million. So at that point, you can pay a wide receiver north of 30. And of course, we'll have to restructure Davante Adams' contract, but I don't think trading him makes a ton of sense. Now, at the same time, as we're talking about Davante Adams and how good this offense may potentially be as we go forward, there's a guy that's on the Las Vegas Raiders offense that is actually going viral. This is going to be our running back, Zamir White. Some of you guys already know this. Zamir White is massive. The guy is strong as hell. He's physical. He's tough. His arms are absolutely massive. And he's been going viral for this picture here on social media. And what's crazy about this picture is, although Zamir White looks absolutely massive, there was a separate video from a couple of months back where Zamir White looks even more ripped. And I'm surprised this picture didn't go as viral as the new picture. And when you're a running back, you have to be strong, because you're going to be running in between the tackles. You're going to be running between guys that are, 300 plus pounds that are going to try grabbing onto you and bringing you down with their body weight. So for Zamir White, you have to be massive. You have to be strong. The guy takes it to a completely different level. And how strong this guy looks, I'm not going to lie, it's absolutely incredible. And I'm excited for Zamir White as we go into this next season. Even the Las Vegas Raiders offensive coordinator, Wilkins, said some interesting words when it came to Zamir White.
Yeah, no, he's been great this offseason. Like you said, we had there was a play in OTA, I think the second week of OTA, and we got to see that speed that he has too. So he kind of creased it and he took it. That was pretty cool. That was pretty cool to see, just he's a different cat. Like, that is like a speed that not many guys have. And to be paired with that size that he has.
So for Luke Etsy to acknowledge that Zamir White is very, very, very fast for essentially how humongous he is, that's something you want to hear, right? You want to hear Luke Etsy tell us that type of combination, that speed and strength, that combination is not something that's normal. And I think Zamir White may actually end up having a really, really good season this season. But I want to see it before I crown it. But I think something's definitely coming with Zamir White. And I do want to go ahead and switch focus as we're talking about Zamir White, because it's kind of on topic with White as well. And that is that there's some interesting battles that are coming up for the Las Vegas Raiders. There's 3 battles specifically, and the first one we're going to talk about is going to be Zamir White and Alexander Mattison. Some people think that Alexander Mattison is going to end up starting for the Las Vegas Raiders, and he'll end up taking more snaps away from Zamir White, but I don't think that's going to happen. Now, I'm not 100% sure if Zamir White will actually have success and if he'll actually end up being a really, really good running back. I don't know if that's going to happen, right? But I do think Zamir White is going to have every opportunity to run away with the job. And I also don't have the confidence that Alexander Mattison could be a lead back. He could be the guy that if you need to give him 20 carries a game, he'll be able to have success, right? Because we've seen Alexander Mattison with the Vikings. He, over the past 2 seasons, has been basically handed the job, and he has not been able to run away with that job. In fact, the guy had a fumbling issue with the Minnesota Vikings, which ultimately led to him getting cut. It led to the Minnesota Vikings fan base kind of being super critical of him. So to me, I think when it comes to the battle between Zamir White and Alexander Mattison, Zamir White's going to win this battle, right? I don't think there's going to be any competition between the 2 guys. Now, I do think Alexander Mattison will be able to play this season. And I think Mattison as a RB2, right, a guy that's going to come in and maybe get like 8 carries a game, he may have 1 carry go for 25 yards, right? And I think as a RB2, Alexander Mattison is going to do a really good job to kind of counter Zamir White. Madden's a little bit more quicker, he's a little bit more explosive, and Zamir White's a lot stronger. So I think those two guys are going to go really, really well together. And they got Dylan Labe as well, who I think out of the backfield is going to be a phenomenal football player. I think the Raiders running back room is going to be a lot better than what people realize. But there's another battle that I think people don't realize is really not going to be a battle. And that's going to be the Cody Whitehair versus Jackson Powers-Johnson battle. And I know some people are going to say that's not really a battle. We already know who's going to end up winning the job. And I would agree with you guys, but not everybody agrees with that. There are people out there that actually think Jackson Powers-Johnson will not start for the Las Vegas Raiders. Some people think the fact that he's only played right guard, the fact that last year he was a center, some people actually think this guy's not going to start for the Las Vegas Raiders at left guard, since it's basically a brand new position. And Cody Whitehair, on the other hand, not only has experience with the offensive coordinator Luke Getsy, but this guy has 8 years in the NFL. He's 31. He's a veteran. And I'll be the first to tell you guys, I think the Raiders would be making a massive mistake by starting Cody Whitehair. Now, I don't personally think it's going to happen. I think talent alone, I don't think Cody Whitehair is even the second best left guard the Raiders have. I would make the argument both Andres Pete and Jackson Powers-Johnson are better guards than is Cody Whitehair. I think Cody Whitehair is a terrible offensive lineman. I think he's a good player if you're looking at guys with, depth potentially. I think he's good in that aspect. I think there's upside if you want to keep him as a swing guard and as a guy that can come in and be center. I think there's upside with Cody Whitehair in that instance. But if Cody Whitehair is your starting guard, your offensive line is going to be in trouble, right? I think there's nothing that Cody Whitehair is going to do for the Raiders that Dylan Parham can't already do, right? In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Cody Whitehair doesn't make the Raiders roster, right? I think he probably will, but don't be surprised if he doesn't make the Raiders roster. I don't think there's any battle between Jackson Powers-Johnson or Cody Whitehair. I think Jackson Powers-Johnson wins that battle 100% of the time. The guy was a second-round pick. And remember, we're not talking quarterbacks. We're talking offensive linemen, right? Quarterbacks, sure, you let them sit a little bit. But with offensive linemen, you don't let these guys sit. If you get a rookie offensive lineman, you pretty much know what the guy is his rookie season, right? There's not a lot of guys that are going to come in their rookie season and struggle like crazy, and then they get so much better going into year 2, 3, and 4. Unless his guys at tackle, like Colton Miller as an example. But on the inside, when Tyler Smith comes to the Dallas Cowboys, I think 2 or 3 years ago, you knew instantly, right? Rookie year, Tyler Smith, 2 or 3 years ago, this guy's going to be a superstar guard. And he's arguably the best guard in the NFL at this point. Zach Martin came in right away, and you knew this guy's a star. And you can look at that across the board. There are so many guards that come into the NFL, you know right away what these guys are. With Jackson Powers-Johnson, I think you'll know right away. And you don't have to sit these guys. Again, guards, I think, play pretty much right away. So I think Jackson Powers-Johnson is going to win the job right away. See what ends up happening. And to end this video, we're going to get into some ownership details that are coming out. And this involves one of the Las Vegas Raiders' former players, a guy that I absolutely loved when he was here with the Raiders. That is going to be defensive tackle Richard Seymour, who was formerly with the Patriots, came over to the Raiders. Richard Seymour, Tommy Kelly, incredible defensive tackle duo. Some of you guys probably don't know Richard Seymour and Tommy Kelly and remember that era. I know a lot of you guys will, but trust me when I tell you guys this, Richard Seymour was the best defensive tackle the Raiders have had. You go back the last 15, 20 years, there's been no one better than Richard Seymour. And since Richard Seymour was with the Raiders, we haven't had another defensive tackle even close to the caliber of player Richard Seymour was at that point. All right, Seymour was an absolute monster. He's kind of like Chris Jones, I would say. Very similar to Chris Jones, right? Great pass rush technique, used his hands really well. Florio says, per a source with knowledge of the situation, Hall of Fame defensive lineman Richard Seymour is close to finalizing a deal to become an owner and limited partner of the Raiders. He went on to say that Richard Seymour, we're told, will join forces with Tom Brady and together and with their own partners, right? So the two guys will ultimately have partners on their own. But together, they would essentially own 10.4% of the team. Which, that's pretty crazy if you guys ask me. Richard Seymour, Tom Brady are going to own a combined 10.4% of the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, I find it very interesting that you got both Richard Seymour and Tom Brady involved in the ownership. And they're going to essentially end up with 10.4% stake in the Raiders. Mark Davis does not own 100% of the Las Vegas Raiders. Although he's the majority owner, there's other ownership. There's other people also involved with the Raiders that own the Las Vegas Raiders. And now you're going to add 2 more people that essentially own the Raiders. And these 2 people are huge in their own mind, right? Everybody knows Tom Brady, but people don't recognize Richard Seymour for the business mind that he essentially is. Richard Seymour has made a couple of really solid investments over the course of his career. He's also been involved in purchasing companies that, maybe startups or those type of things. So Seymour has done a really good job financially, and he's also going to be involved with the Las Vegas Raiders as we go forward from an ownership perspective. Now, everybody already knows the report that had came out that Richard Seymour was actually involved in the Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce hire. Right? Richard Seymour was one of the guys that ultimately gave Mark Davis advice. Seymour is obviously a very smart person. He's a phenomenal football player, but he's intelligent as hell, right? And Richard Seymour essentially gave Mark Davis the head, the advice, as we should say, right? To go forward with Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce. And I agree with that 100%. Especially the Tom Telesco hire. I think the Raiders made a phenomenal decision with Tom Telesco. I think Telesco has shown us, while he's with the Chargers, that he's one of those guys that knows what he's doing when it comes to drafting. Especially in the first and second round, when I think, where it really matters, right? First, second round really matter. And Tom Telesco has shown us that he can do a great job. And Richard Seymour agreed with that. And he actually gave Mark Davis the advice that he should go forward with it. And I'm loving the fact that Mark Davis is getting guys like Richard Seymour and Tom Brady involved with the organization. You want the Raiders to be known as a team whose owners are guys like Tom Brady, Richard Seymour. I think as guys coming out of college, it also makes you kind of want to play for the Raiders a little bit more. Over the past, 15 years, everybody's known who, what team Michael Jordan has owned. Everybody knows what team Jay-Z has owned. Right? People know, and people want to kind of play for those teams a little bit. Although, some of those teams may have sucked. Regardless, you want to be able to play for teams with certain guys at the top. And I think for the Raiders, it's a really good opportunity. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, consider subscribing, and I will see you guys next time with another video.